I don't know how to describe it other than like a demon type of sound.
But it's silhouetted, hulking, every bit of 5.5 feet wide, 13 to 14 foot tall, pitch black.
The one thing that ran through my mind when I had this encounter was I don't have a big enough gun.
Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello, everyone. This is the fourth part of a very interesting discussion that Rebecca and I have been having. Before we get started, I mentioned on the last segment about the newest book that I published. It's called Witness of the Unknown. It's a collection of stories that people have been asking me to put together for some time, actually. And there are 36 stories in the first volume. 6 of them are known stories that have been out, like the miners' attack at Mount St. Helens in 1924 and Cowman and a couple others. I put those in there with 30 unknown accounts that people have sent me over the years. All very interesting there for comparison purposes, those known stories versus the unknown, to show just how similar they are, that there's not a great deal of variation. There is among the people, of course, and the circumstances, but Sasquatch behaviors come through pretty clearly in all of these. So it's a pretty interesting read. If you get a chance, check that out. It's available at Amazon.com. So without hesitation, last we were talking, to sort of pick up at that point, you were telling me about having one of these creatures on your porch.
Yes. Did we, how far did I get into that? Because I think didn't we decide that I was going to start talking about that?
Yes.
At this segment?
I believe so. We didn't get too far into it.
Okay. All right. Well, as I said before, I was trying to convey to the audience that when I moved in there, I didn't realize what I had moved into. And these guys didn't take too awful long to begin to show themselves to me. I don't know what happened with the previous neighbors. Never got a chance to meet them or talk to them, but I can tell you what, it was a ride there. These guys weren't aggressive. For this incident, really bothered me. And what had actually taken place was I had to get up at 4 o'clock. I'm retired now, but when I was working, I had to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's when I took my showers. And I kept hearing walking, stomping and noises right outside my shower. And I think I'd said that in a previous. I don't know if it was the last one or the one before that, but now I've actually found a humongous footprint right outside in the mud, right underneath that, right underneath my window. And I do actually have that photo in my I think it's in my computer that crashed, and I got to figure out how to take it in to somebody to see if it can be recovered. But any of that, I'll move on. It was just a normal, everyday 4 o'clock thing with all the stomping around while I'm taking a shower, and I could hear them out there, and I could hear movement. I mean, I knew one was out there. But on this morning, I went out and I let my cat out, and I'm trying to think of myself. I know my son used to go over and sleep overnight at my other son's house, which was like 2 streets down. For some reason, I'm trying to think in my mind what happened, but the dog was not there, but the cat was. I let the cat out. And the neighbor guy, there was his sister had moved out and bought a home. She used to live there and complained all the time about someone knocking over her wheelbarrow and getting into stuff that was around the shed and banging on the shed, and they were hearing noises, and the door on their truck had been open and left open, and they thought that there was somebody in the neighborhood who was trying to steal stuff from them, but they just found things knocked around the yard. Well, that their yard right there at that where that was faced my back door, and so their front door faced my back door. And that one morning, I went out there, and this woman, she always went out there at about 4 o'clock in the morning to smoke because she got up early also. And I went out there and I went around, because the cat started looking weird and she started to run. And I'm like, no, Misha, get back here, And this woman was standing up and she was going, stop. And I'm like, what's the matter? She goes, my boyfriend's going to get the gun. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, the gun. She goes, there's somebody on your backyard, a porch. And I'm like, what? And I'm just standing there, of course. I'm still trying to wake up. And I'm like, I got to get ready for work. What's going on? She goes, somebody was just standing on your back porch. Well, in a previous segment, I had mentioned to you, Will, I believe, that I had that little stick-on, cheap, siren thing that went off, if the door got, there was any kind of vibration. Remember I mentioned that?
Right.
Remember that security thing? Well, that thing was going off, and I started wondering to myself, I'm listening to her talk, and I'm trying to stay calm. I'm like, really? I said, so somebody was standing on my back door, and she goes, yeah. She goes, my boyfriend's going to, I said, don't, we don't need to have people, this is, don't shoot, don't start shooting. You don't know where that bullet's going to go, There is a neighbor on the other side of the woods somewhere up back there, and you don't want somebody, something to happen, And so I'm trying to calm him down. I said, just tell me what happened. He's like, I came out here for a smoke, and I'm sitting out here, and she goes, I look over, I turn my porch light on, because sometimes I stand out there without the porch light, so I turn the porch light on, and there's this black man standing on your back door, on your little porch thing there. And I said, what? And she goes, yeah. And I said, so what did he look like? And she said, I don't know. It was hard to tell. He was all black. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm not saying anything to her, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay. So I said, tell me, was he tall? Was he short? Did you see his face? And she goes, he was really, really tall. She goes, in fact, I haven't seen the only person I've ever seen that tall was a basketball player. Just like, oh, you're kidding me. They're coming to my back door now. And so I said, well, calm down. And I said, well, what happened? When she goes, well, I started yelling, from my boyfriend, and she goes, it jumped off your porch. I said, well, okay, so where did it go? Off in the woods. It jumped up and went in the woods behind your place. I said, and she goes, you need to call the police. And in my head, I'm going, oh my Lord. And she's like, you need to call the police right now. She goes, you need to call. I said, that's scary. Somebody's out there, and you don't know who this is. And I said, so you didn't see his face or anything? She goes, no, it was all black. And I said, okay, so what do you mean by all black? She goes, I don't know. She goes, maybe he was wearing a black jumpsuit or something, because it was just huge and like really tall and just all black. I must have been wearing black gloves or something, because I didn't see any. You need to call the police right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, calm down. And I said, I'll go in and call the police. Well, I had absolutely no intention on calling the police. Because I pretty much knew, right? What would you tell somebody who is, thinks they're a myth or thinks that they're a joke or something that somebody wrote in the book someplace, as a fairy tale, And I'm just like, okay, just calm down. I got to get ready for work. I'm going to be late for my job. Okay. I have to get ready, but I will call the police. Okay. You will, right? You will, right? And I said, yeah, I will. And it was hard for me to say that to her, because I'm so, I'm so truthful about stuff that I didn't want to lie to her, but I felt like I needed to, get this whole thing, and I'm like, okay, don't just go in your house. And she goes, I said, it's going to be light pretty soon, and probably just a one-time thing, and they didn't get away with anything, and they probably never return. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, geez. So I got her calmed down. She goes, yeah, I got to go to work too. And I said, okay, just go in and shut your door and lock your door, and I'll make a police report. I went in and showered, and the whole time I'm thinking was, you've got to be kidding me. No wonder my back door, that little thing keeps going off. Now I'm finding out it's standing at my back door. That bothers me because I'm thinking to myself, we all know that this thing can grab a hold of that door and rip it clean off the hinges. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I'm thinking, is this coming next, or what am I dealing with here? So that incident that I know of anyway didn't happen again. I mean, when you're sleeping, you really don't know what's going on out there. But the next incident that happened there was kind of on the heels of this. It was maybe a couple weeks later, and I want to say a couple weeks later, and I was sleeping, and I got woke up to a wood knock, clear as day, right behind. I mean, it was heavy knock, bang, and it just kind of echoed, through the forest. And then about 15 seconds later, 20 seconds later, I heard another knock way far away. And I mean, it seemed like a maybe, I'm thinking maybe a mile away or something. It just, when you hear something,
kind of like
and you're out in the woods, and right, it was a response, but it just seemed like it was another one was responding, but this one wasn't there. It was a little bit farther away down, I don't know. It just seemed like it was far away, and but you could hear it very clearly, but it was 3/4 of a mile. I'm going to guesstimate somewhere in that. And I'm listening to myself, and I'm like, great. Now they're wood knocking behind my house. Wonderful. And I'm laying there, and the next thing I heard was stomping, walking. I should say that. Footfalls. That's what I mean to say. Footfalls. Heavy, vibrating footfalls coming right up alongside where I sleep. And it was just like stomp, stomp, stomp. And then it just stopped at the corner of where my head was. And each time it stepped, you could feel a vibration go through, the ground, and it was going through me. I could feel it. I could feel that vibration. So, I'm thinking to myself, it's got to be that big black male again. It's got to be that one, that clan leader. And then all of a sudden I hear, because I had told everyone previously and you that I had a very big yard. And, that thing took me 3 hours to mow. But anyway, I would hear, all of a sudden I heard boom, 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 boom. And it's running. It breaks out into this run, and it's running. You could hear it, and the place is vibrating. I mean, the ground is vibrating, and it's running across my lawn. And then I'm thinking that I heard a little whoop, howly whoop or something, and then it all went quiet. I never heard anything else, But I just sit there and I thought to myself, they're just not afraid. They're out here and they're making themselves known to me. And I wanted to be careful that any of neighbors at that time, I'm not disclosing anything. I'm not telling because that's just the way I am. I'm not going to go around going, wow, you should see what happened over here. No, I am shut mouth about this because, what kind of a thing would that cause? People running out in the woods with guns or laughing at me or whatever. It's just ridiculous. I didn't even see the point. I just kept everything to myself. So that incident happened. And that was interesting. And then this had happened, I'm going to say around March of, what year was that? I'm thinking that was 2010. And so then that summer, it was pretty hot. I'm thinking this was in late June or July, maybe. It was really hot. And I would come home when needed, and I would grab the lawnmower, and I would start immediately mowing. I'm literally throwing my stuff down because I'm like, I got to get this lawn mowed. I got to go to work in the morning, and there's no other choice. I got to fly in the house, put my stuff down, get some water, and start, mowing this lawn. So I did that, and this was interesting. And by that time, I already knew they were there. Obviously, we know this. So I started mowing this lawn. And I would do rows where I would do rows away. My back would be to the woods, and I would move off toward the other direction, and then I would turn around and do rows. You know how you do rows when you're mowing. And I got to, like maybe the fourth row, and I swiveled it around, and I'm getting my back is to the woods, and I'm starting to mow, and I'm into that row, maybe 12 feet or something. I'm just guesstimating. And this rock comes rolling alongside the lawnmower in front of the lawnmower and stops. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at that rock, and I was so focused. I get tunnel vision on stuff, and I mean, I was just dead on focused on what I was doing. And I think that when I first saw the rock, I'm thinking, how did that rock get there? I thought I'd check for rocks. I'm being like that, literally. So I tossed the rock over my shoulder into the woods, and I keep going. And I do about another 4 rows or something to that effect. And I swivel around, and my back is to the woods. And here comes another rock. And I would say the rocks are about, I guess, the size of your hand, or something to that effect, right around the middle of your hand. If you look at that, what is that? I don't know.
Maybe tennis ball size.
An inch and a half. Yeah, something like that. Or maybe a little bit smaller than that. And it's enough to notice, okay? And by then, I'm seeing movement, and I'm catching that movement. It's rolling right next to it, and I'm like, what? So I let go of the lever on the lawnmower, and that turns off, and I'm sitting there, I'm looking at that rock, and I turn around and I look at the woods. And I'm like, I know that's you guys, you know what I mean? Leave me alone. I'm trying to... I'm actually chuckling by this point. I can't help but will. I mean, by this time I'm chuckling. I'm like, I know that's you guys. I don't know what game you're trying to play, but knock it off. I don't want to roll my lawnmower over this. You're going to break my lawnmower. So I threw that back into the woods. And it wasn't the same rock. It was something else. But anyway, so I didn't get it. Everything was fine. And I finally get to the end of this whole thing, and I'm dragging the lawnmower back toward the shed, which is about maybe, 30 feet, I guess, from the front of my porch deck. And I look and here, right behind where the 4th row was, or 5th row that I'd done, was a big old huge, dark, damp part of a stump that had been thrown into the yard. And that was maybe 10 feet from the tree line, okay? And I stood there and I looked at that and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And when I went to pick it up, I just stood there and I thought, I can't believe this. So I tried to pick that thing up, and it was pretty weighty. I mean, I had to take both hands and try to lug it by this, It had slime on it and everything else. I had to pick it up and drag it toward the tree line and then just kind of swing it. So I'm guessing the thing weighed about 60 pounds, and I just, it didn't fly very far,
I guess they didn't like the lawnmower.
I don't know what the issue, but that lawnmower I guess that lawnmower all summer long was always fertilizing that and thought, I'm going to make this grass so green. I was always out there, I had another incident too. One time I took a sun chair and I went out there and I sat with my face toward the woods, back over where my bedroom was, and I was just sitting there. I was going to read a book, but the sun felt so good and I just wanted to lay there. All of a sudden there was just this whooshing, like something really fast just went whooshing right through the weeds and the trees, right in front of the tree line. And I was about right there at the tree line, basically. And nothing ever happened. I mean, there was no rocks thrown at me or anything like that. But I mean, the trees moved and everything. And I just thought, okay, I'm getting up, never mind, I'll go somewhere else or I'll go in, but yeah, that happened too. So that was kind of comical. There were some kind of, I call it prankster, kind of pranks. My lawn ornaments, got stolen, and I would get rocks, and in return. And and during this time, I was also visiting this park in Puyallup. Remember, I told you about that. And I got in there, and there on one side of this park, pretty decently large park. On one side, it was a wooded park, and in Puyallup, and that was a kind of a walking area, and they had like exercise things, where bars, we could do pull-ups and things like that, and you'd go so far and you'd find something else. But on the other side, it was all wooded and just kind of wild, and I went out in there. I just thought, one day I kept going past there, during my course of my work, and I thought, I'm going in there, because I'd never been in there. And I thought, I need to go in there, because I'd seen inside there that there was a tree angled kind of funny, against another tree, and I thought that could have just been, from weather, it could have been something else, but I just like to go in there and investigate. And what started was a series of I'm going to say incidences, okay? I'm not going to say encounters. I'm going to call it incidences, because I never had a face-to-face encounter. I never saw one, but the evidence of their interaction was there. And I decided one day to find this. That was during that time of my life, the gifting tree. I don't know if people are still doing that, because I've been out of this for a while. I'm busy being a grandma and stuff like that. But a lot of people are doing, or maybe still are doing, the gifting stump thing. Well, I found this stump, and I decided, you know what? I'm going to do some stuff, and I put a Snickers candy bar up there, and I put, just little trinkets of stuff, and I thought, I'm just going to set this here, and I'm going to see if something happens, So I came back a week later. Oh, I forgot to tell you, right about 20 feet, honestly, 25 feet, right from off that gifting stump was what looked like, and I have pictures of this, what looked like the beginnings of maybe a structure, maybe a shelter, because it kind of was looking sheltery, but you could see through it, and it looked like it was starting to be constructed. It was very evident to me what it was. So then I come back later, I would say a week later, and I decided that weekend to visit it, and it was bigger. It had been built on, which surprised me, and I took pictures of that. And the trinkets were gone, and the candy bars were gone, and I had a rock stacked up very precariously. They're on, anybody like you will could go on, we're friends on Facebook. You can go on my page. I think there's an area where you can go in and look at my pictures. I think you can see that. And I received like 3 of those during the course of 2012. And I finally, and there was so much stuff going on in there, and things I was hearing, and I just kept going in there. And I took Lori Simmons. Lori Simmons and I were friends, pretty good friends. And I told her about it. And she goes, I want to go, and I'm like, you do? And she goes, yes. She goes, I'll meet you there. And I'm like, that's awesome. So, we met, and oh boy, did they react to her. We hadn't been in there more than 5 minutes. I swear this, Will. You can call her and ask her. We weren't in there even 5 minutes. And she, has a viewpoint, and she has her convictions about things, and she began to talk to them and ask them, tell them, and she was introducing herself out into the air, speaking out into the air, and we start getting these thumps. Bang, bang, thump, thump, this deal. And we looked at each other like, what? And then all of a sudden we heard this crash, split. We heard a tree split that resounded through everywhere. The air was just resounding with this tree split. And we just looked at each other like, oh, geez, what was that? And I said, Lori, I said, that's coming from the area that I always walk through. She goes, let's go. So we went in there, and we found a very large tree well where the top, it's like it just exploded. And it was just shredded everywhere. And we just sit there and look. Now, I don't know what the message was, you know. I'm not sure what that message was. I'm not going to be pretend to be a Sasquatch whisperer, you know.
Right.
I just know that it was a message of some sort. But we didn't feel, there wasn't that foreboding, you know, a frightening feeling like we got to get out of here. We got to get out of here right now. Because a lot of times you will get that feeling, like you get that foreboding. You know, your senses start stirring up like, you need to get out of here, you know. And I've been in situations where I felt like that, like the one at the property that I was just talking about, where I got out of my car and walked up to, did we talk about that? Didn't I mention that one?
I'm not certain if we did or not.
I was on my way to work. I'll just just go over it real quickly.
Okay.
Because I think I did mention it. But anyway, I had to go to work, and I didn't have to be, you know, at work quite so early that morning. But I was getting my car, and the sun was shining, and I think it was like in May or something. And I was backing out of my driveway, looking across my yard into the tree line, and this gnarly oak tree. It was an old gnarly with big, huge, gnarled branches that outstretched on either side. And, you know, it just wasn't in the best condition. It looked kind of sick, and, you know, I think it was dying. And it looked like something was on the tree. And I kept looking, and I thought, that's weird. What's on the tree, you know? And it kept bugging me. And I kept looking at that, and I said, what is wrong with that tree? Why am I... It's almost like when you look at something, Will, you look at something and you see it with your eyes, but it's like your mind is not perceiving clearly what you're looking at. I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm looking at this, and I'm like, why do I keep seeing eyes? And why do I think I'm looking at a face? This is, I'm questioning myself. Well, I happen to have binoculars in my car because I take, at that point in time, I'm taking binoculars because I went all sorts of places, and I had gone to Morton, and I'd gone to Oregon. And I had my binoculars because I like to have off time. And when I had off time, I would use my binoculars and I'd scout around. Well, so I get my binoculars and I look through the binoculars, and I'm seeing a face. And I'm saying to myself, am I really seeing this? And I would take it down and I would look, and then I put binoculars up and look. And then I see a whole face, and I see shoulders, and I see what looks like a body leaning up against a tree. Well, I do have a little spitfire in me, and at times I can be really bold. And I got irritated, sort of like, I want to say irritated, but I wasn't irritated. I was like, oh, forget this. I'm getting out of my car, and I'm walking up there because I got to see this. I got to see what I'm looking at. If I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing through the binoculars, I want to see it with my bare eyes. So I get out of my car, leave the car door open, I walk across the yard, and I come within like 20 feet of this thing, and I'm standing on the tree line, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I kind of... I didn't feel in danger, but I think I had shock. It just kind of overtook me again, because I'm looking at this creature that was leaning up against a tree, looking straight up in the air, and it had like reddish cinnamon brown hair, but very kind of a mousy gray, almost looked like an older, and the hair was thin, and you could see this gray skin through, you know, its chest. Now, I don't know if it was thick. I don't know if it was older, but it almost had well, I'm telling you, in my life, this thing looked like an orangutan. I don't know how else to say it, but it's the truth. I mean, you know, it had an orangutan kind of look, and it had more hair hanging off the underside of its arms than it did anywhere on its body. But it had, you know, definitely gray skin, you know, you could see right through it, just really scraggly, thin hair hanging off of its chest. and it just kept staring up, and it wasn't moving. And I just had this feeling like I'm backing out. I started backing backwards, and I thought, I can't believe this is happening to me. I can't believe it's letting me sit here and look at it, you know. And I'm like, I'm getting out of here now. I know, you know, I'm trying to count how many I think is really out there, and I'm backing up. And it was really disturbing. It really upset me. I turned around and I got into the car, and I sat there for a minute, and I thought, and I have to go to work, and I have to go to work, and I can't call in sick, you know, and I don't have any choice. I got to go, you know, and I was very upset because I had to drive away from that, full well knowing, and everybody in the audience pretty much knows that you'll never have that experience again. You know, the more than likely, I mean, I can't believe I've had the experiences that I have had, you know, so I knew. And of course, you know, but I think that this was the one that I mentioned earlier during looking at the Christmas tree, the one I saw reach for the window trying to touch the tree, the Christmas tree lights. I think that was the one because I saw the long hair hanging from the arm. And I think this is the same one. So anyway, I don't know if I mentioned that, but, you know, then I can move on to, but Lori Simmons, you know, she's amazing. You know, I just have to say this. And I was actually out with her I got an opportunity to go with her to her Cascades location, or North Cascades, where she goes. And we ended up getting surrounded. We ended up getting surrounded that day, and it was starting to get dark, and really wasn't the intention. It took so long to get there that by the time, you know, we were hearing thumpings, we were hearing, you know, tree knocking, we were hearing stuff, and we knew that they were around us. But, you know, when you're coming out of there, the road that we actually went down into her area, you had to park and walk down so that by the time you're walking back, you know, you've got this ridge above you. And I started seeing eyes behind her, and I started seeing sets of eyes up in trees, you know, around us. And she even got really nervous, and I'm like, you know, it's time to go. That one made me nervous. That one made me really, really nervous, and I'm just very thankful that all of us got out of there, you know, safe, you know. And, it was a pretty harrowing experience for me, but the work that she's doing down there and the stuff that she's doing is very credible, and she's just a pretty amazing, bold woman, you know, to be doing what she's doing. So anyway, that's a plug for Lori. If you're out there, Lori. And so, okay, moving along. Now, I had a sighting. Now, this one, I actually went, okay, so I'm going to skim over this because you wanted to talk about the Carbon River. Okay, so 240th and Mountain Highway, you know where that is.
Right.
You know, up there. And I went left because I had talked to this elderly couple who was crying to me, saying that their grandson would never come there again because he had spent the night there, you know, and would come and see Grandma and Grandpa. And would look out the window at night because he heard noises. And he said that there was a red-eyed screaming monster walking around their house, you know, and the grandparents thought it was elk, but they admitted that it was the craziest sounded elk they ever heard. Well, anyway, I told him, I said, you know, if you want, I'll come up there. And so I did, you know, and it turned out they were not there. I was supposed to meet them there, and I don't know what happened, but I showed up over there, and it was across from this cow field, and there were trees, you know, woods everywhere, you know, but there were some pastures, you know, right out in there, and actually turned on to 240th off of Mountain Highway and went out there. And I had a problem with a car at the time that I was driving. The transmission was starting to go bad, and they went there, and I waited around, and there was a creek back there. Sure enough, they told me that there was a creek back there, and that they didn't know what was going on, but they'd sure like to know. And I told them, you know, about, you know, Bigfoot, and they were just astounded. They were dumbfounded. They said that the elderly couple, they said, "You mean that? Are you trying to tell me that Bigfoot's real?" And I said, "Yes, sir, they are. I've seen them." And they just looked at each other, and they're like, almost started crying. They're like, "I can't believe this. I thought it was a myth. I thought it was something that somebody made up." And I said, "No." And I said, "They're real." I said, "I've seen them. And you're more than likely maybe having some activity." I wasn't trying to scare them. I was trying to talk to them. And I don't know where they were when I showed up over there, but I walked around. I stayed there about 20 minutes, and then I started trying to back out. And, of course, my transmission started, spinning, and I was having a hard time getting reverse. Reverse was a problem with me in that car. And as I was backing out, I decided to leave, and I was backing out, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and here was one walking about, I'm trying to think how exactly, I keep saying different feet, but I can't remember. It wasn't right behind me. It was probably down about, okay, I'm going to say roughly 400 feet, okay? I'm just going to put it at that, somewhere between 300 and 400 feet it was back there. And it crossed the road, and I'm looking in my rearview mirror, because everybody who backs out of anywhere looks in the rearview mirror. And I saw that thing, and I was like, I just sit there, and I said, what? And I just sit there on the road, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I didn't know whether to leave my car on the road. I didn't know whether to try to back in, back into that people's driveway. I'm like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. So I'm just sitting there, and I'm looking in my rearview mirror, and I'm watching this thing, and it's like got a dropped shoulder, and it's ambling. It's kind of shuffling, and it's coming toward me. And I'm like, okay, I got to do something right now. And I had to make a decision. I had to start thinking about this. Okay, am I going to just get out of here, or am I going to confront the situation and try to, once again, have this boldness to go and see something that I may never see again, have this experience. And I thought, okay, well, I'm in the car, I could smash the windshield, but here I go. And I'm trying to, and then I see a headlights coming up way at the end of the road. There's this little hill, and up comes these headlights, and here comes what looked like to be a pretty large SUV. And I'm like, whoa, this thing is right there. And I'm like, I want to know if I'm really seeing what I'm seeing, if what happens, what kind of reaction this driver has. So I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I got to get off the road. So I get into that guy's driveway, and I get out of my car, and I'm standing there, and the SUV veers over in the other lane all of a sudden, and then just goes ripping past me. I mean, like 90 miles an hour. And the stop sign is not far from where I was. And I saw all this, and I thought, yep. So I jumped in my car, and I thought, okay, I got to do this. I got to do this now. And I pulled forward, and by the time I actually got out of the driveway and pulled out onto the road to go toward it, I was watching it jump this huge ditch. It was a very deep ditch there, and it ran off toward the woods, and it was gone. But I knew I had that experience, and so I came back. Like it wasn't, maybe it was the next weekend. I came back with someone else, and we were trying to find evidence, like hair on a caught on a barbed wire fence of this cattle thing. Barbed wire is cattle out there. And it was a very deep ditch. We were looking for any disturbance, any imprints, anything. The ground was very gravelly and hard right there. And there wasn't much of the side of that road. There was a highway. And when I saw that thing, the thing that really caught my eye is, first of all, its size, how tall it was. It was black also. And it took one step, it's in the middle of the road, and then another step, and it's on the other side of the road. Okay? You try to walk across the highway and see how many steps it takes you to walk across.
Yeah, they're pretty
wide.
wide. They're pretty wide.
Right. This was 2 steps. This is 2 steps, right? So anyway, I know what I was dealing with, and I came back. And here comes this feisty old lady, and she's in her 70s. She appears to be in her late 70s, and she's riding on one of those little riding mobility vehicles, and she's riding on it, and she's coming up that road, and she's mad, and she stops and she goes, "What are you doing?" And we turned around and looked at her, and I said, "What?" And I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Well, hi." And she goes, "I want to know if you're planning on being on my property." And I said, "No, we're right here on the side of the road." And she goes, "I want you to leave." And I said, "Ma'am, listen, we're trying to to do some investigation on something right here, but we're not on your property, and we have no plans to go on your property. And she goes, I see kids out here, high school kids in college, they're picking my mushrooms, and they're on my property. And she goes, people around these parts shoot first and ask questions later. And I'm just looking at her like, don't shoot us. I started laughing. I said, don't shoot us. I said, we don't have any weapons. I said, we're not here to harm you or any of your property, and we will stay off your property. And she goes, well, I want to know what you're doing out here then if you're not planning on picking my mushrooms. And I'm like, we're just out here investigating something. I said, because there was a neighbor of yours who had a Bigfoot sighting, and we're out here trying to find evidence of that. And there was something I witnessed here, about a week ago, and it crossed, from your property and went toward this other property. And she goes, what? She goes, that has to be one of my black bears. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? So I didn't want to argue with her. I just wanted her to talk to me. I was trying to get her to talk to me. And she kind of opened up a little bit. She goes, I have these black bears around here. And she goes, and they come and eat my apples, and my cows are bellowing all the time, and they run clear to the other end of the, of the pasture, and I'm so sick and tired of it. I don't know how to get rid of them because, I'm not going to go out there. I said, really? I said, black bears? And I'm just thinking in my head, I said, so they come and they eat your apples? She goes, yeah. She goes, they come up there and they eat my apples, and they're always standing on their hind legs, and they walk around on hind legs till they get all their apples. And so I was kind of like trying to lead her in a conversation that would talk to me about what would make her think. And so I asked her, I said, do your black bears walk around all the time on their hind legs? And she goes, oh, yeah. She goes, these black bears are special. And I said, well, ma'am, I said, black, and the other guy goes, yeah, he says, black bears don't, they biomechanically, they can only stand on, they're only designed to stand on their legs, for a short period of time. And she goes, not my bears. She's really gruffy and real feisty. And she goes, not my black bears. She goes, I see them all the time. Don't tell me. And I'm like, oh, well, they walk around on their legs all the time? And she goes, yes. And she goes, there's a group of them. And I'm like, oh. I said, well, ma'am, did you ever happen to think that they might be Bigfoot? She goes, they don't exist. There is no such thing. And I said, actually, ma'am, I've seen them. And this guy pipes up and says, yeah, we're actually researchers, or we're doing research. I don't call myself a researcher because I've never called myself that. She goes, we're actually doing some investigation on this sighting. And yes, both of us have had experiences. And she's seen, he pointed at me. He goes, she's seen, quite a few of them. And she looked at me and she goes, what? Are you serious? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she goes, you're trying to tell me that you've really seen them, right? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she sat there with her mouth open, and she looked off into the air for a minute, and she goes, hey, I don't even know what to say right now. And she goes, and I said, I'm not, trying to contradict what you're telling me. And I said, but it could be that what you're perceiving as bears are really a group of Bigfoots, and they're coming to eat your apples, and they're and your cows will run and bellow, they will run. And so by the time we got done talking to her, she had settled way down, and she goes, well, how do I know that you're really telling me the truth? And I said, well, you don't have to take my word for it. And I said, but if you have an internet, or, at some point in time, you may hear something, and you may be able to follow up on that to find out that, what I'm telling you really is the truth. I mean, I have no reason to lie to you. I'm just telling you that this is what I think is going on here. So you might want to keep an eye out, a little closer eye out on what's going on. Like, I gave her my phone number, but she never called me. I didn't really expect her to call me, but
Sure.
I just left her my number. And that was basically that. But that happened. There was that incident that happened. And that was right out in this, because I wanted you to know that, because you have done so much research in that whole Pierce County area like that. So, I wanted to tell you about that incident. Now, the Carbon River, that was crazy. The Carbon River, how much time have I got? What am I doing here? I've got 20 minutes?
Oh, you got plenty of time yet.
Okay. the Carbon River incident, there was a researcher from what am I wondering, where was it? Oh, I'm forgetting right now. It's not Minnesota. But anyway, there was a researcher that was out of state. It'll come to me. And he, we'd chatted back and forth a few times about incidences and things like that. And I knew that he had a lot of knowledge. He was kind of a mountain man, kind of this guy. And he always went against the grain, find out things himself, and he did a lot of walking and he did a lot of research. He spent, weeks and months out in the woods, and he knew a lot of stuff, he shared those things with me. And so he, wanted to come up. And when I told him some of the stuff was coming out here, and he asked me, he says, well, I'm coming out that way because I have a son that lives in Seattle. And would you mind if, I came over? And I said, no. I said, I have my son here, who lives with me and stuff like that. And he goes, well, I'm going to be up, for about 3 days. And, I could maybe come over and, could you take me, because I was telling him, that I had wanted to go, had actually been to the Carbon River and, and heard some sounds. And I knew that there's some stuff going on there, and he wanted to go there. So, yeah, he came up. And we went to Carbon River. And I parked my car. I went back there. You're familiar with that Ording Road, that Highway 162. I know you are, Will.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And back there, I'm thinking it's Williams Road. But anyway, there's an intersection there. And I took a left in there and drove way back in the, zigzag back in there till I found this parking spot and just locked my car up and I left it there. And we started walking in there. And, on occasion, people who live in that area, it's become a housing, it's been developed, you know what I mean? There's
right.
houses out there, a lot of houses. And so a lot of joggers go out there and people walk their dogs out there and it's beautiful. You've been out there, I know you have. And it's really beautiful, really nice, beautiful, wide, path to walk on,
Oh, I used to walk that path all the time.
Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I used to walk out the South Prairie.
Yep, so we kind of wiggled our way up in there, went up through a couple, pushed a few branches by and went up in there and then we were on that path, And we took a right, decided to take a right and start walking. Well, there was nobody out there for some reason, and I'm trying to think what time we actually made it out there. I guess it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I want to say it was 3:30 in the afternoon. And we started walking. We're just talking and, about incidences and things like that. Well, we hear this kind of a cry, whoop, or something, funny sound. And I stopped for a minute and thought, oh, here we go, And I said, did you hear that? And he goes, yeah, I heard that. And we just stood there and we kind of looked up. And this is at that ridge, when you're walking along that path, you overlook the river. And there's that ridge, you know what I'm talking about, Will? Way up. I don't know how you're really good at feet, guesstimating height. But it went up there quite a ways. And there's this ridge and there's trees up there and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So you're looking over the river, and there's up high. It goes over the river, and then it goes up, and you have this ridge up there as you're walking along, and about 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, we hadn't been in there very long, and this tree, and I mean a tree, a whole tree, pretty good sized tree, gets pushed off the ridge. And it comes crashing down on the, across the river on the other side, down at the bottom of that ridge. And we're like, and we're standing there looking at that. We looked at each other and we're like, wow. And I'm like, okay. So we stood there for a minute, we talked a few minutes, and we looked at that, and then we just started walking again. And every couple of minutes, a tree would get pushed down, and it would come off that ridge and crash down to the bottom of that ridge. And then there was 3 trees that came crashing down simultaneously right at the bottom of the ridge right after that as we were walking. And as we were walking, it was like parallel. Like wherever we were where that tree or those trees came down. And this was happening for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We go around this, like just a slight bend, and this guy was out there with 2 hunting dogs. And he comes running up to us. And he goes, "Did you see that?" And we looked at each other and looked at him, and I go, well, what exactly do you mean? Did you see that? Did you see that tree? Did you see that thing come crashing down? And I'm like, yeah, actually, we did see it. And he said it was a whole tree. It split clear. It hit so hard at the bottom that it split, And, we once again, what do you tell somebody like that? Yeah, we saw it.
Sure.
So that's what we told him. Yeah, we saw it. And he talked about it for a long time. He goes, you know what? He goes, I walk out in this parts all the time. He goes, I'm always out here. And he goes, I've never seen anything like this. He says, I'm not sure what's going on here. He goes, but trees are falling down at the top of that ridge. And I'm like, yeah, there's kind of more behind us too. And he's like, there is? And we talked for a few minutes, and then he literally rushed, kind of like, I got to go see this. And we kind of, well, nice to meet you. We don't know. Have a nice day. And we kept walking. And this kind of stuff kept happening. Well, finally it stops. And we don't get any more activity, anything like that happening. And we keep walking, and we keep walking, and we keep walking. It's just so beautiful. So then we get to this area where there's, like a wide riverbed. Here's the river, but we can actually walk out onto rocks, and we decided to do that. Well, it was funny. We walked along there, and we found what looked to be a little... Okay, I'll just tell you what we found. We found these sticks that had been propped up, little sticks. I'm talking about, maybe just a couple of inches high. And little sticks, and they were propped up against each other. And then there was a couple of pine cones that were sticking up, had been pushed into the ground next to us, and a little cube of wood. We don't know where it came from, like somebody, like from a mill or something, where somebody had been doing woodwork, and there's this little cube of wood, not plywood. What am I going to say? It was solid, just a little cube of wood that was maybe ½ inch by ½ inch, cube, and it was underneath these sticks. And then there was a couple little sprigs of fur that had been pushed into the ground around it, kind of like it looked like a little house with some trees. Like, I don't know. I mean, it didn't get that way by itself, And I took a picture of that because it was so interesting. And so it kind of looked like a little child had made that. So I'm not sure if that was a human child, but the funny thing is it was so far out on the riverbed that I'm having a hard time believing that was a human child.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think that possibly might have been a little baby structure is where we're going with that, And that was very interesting, the way that looks. I took a picture of that. Now, when it started getting dark. We were out there a ways. It started getting dark, and we were thought, you got to turn around. We're out here a ways. So we start to turn around, and we're walking, and it's just starting, and some twilight stuff is starting to set in, and we're finally getting to the point. I mean, it's twilight enough that we're going, wait a minute, how do we get out of here? Where's the entrance? We're kind of getting nervous, like it's getting dark. I can't remember where we get, and all of a sudden we look down, and there is 2 pieces of wood. They were branches, and they had been crossed over each other and was sitting in the middle of the road that we had passed over that wasn't there before, in the form of a cross or an X, whichever way you want to say that, but it looked more like a cross than it did an X, and just crossed over each other. And we were the only ones out there, Will. And so that was not there when we went that direction. When we came back, that was there. So we also found a hide out there, a cow hide out there that, but I think that I had heard stories about somebody was stealing cows out there. But anyway, we found a cow hide out there. And that was interesting, but I don't know. I don't think it was connected with the Bigfoot.
Sure.
It could have been, but I doubt it. It looked like it was a little bit too clean. The way it had been skinned and everything, that looks just a little bit too clean. I doubt Sasquatch had anything to do with that. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, it was just a real odd experience out there. I know that they had been out there. I know they were out there. I heard the howl. The trees were pushed down. Then there was that that thing that was on the road. And then I get back to the car. We finally figure out where we got out of there. We got to the car, and there were sprigs of flowers, wildflowers, and some fur, just a little sprig of fir tree sitting on the top of my car.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Isn't it, though? So I don't know what to make of that. You know what I mean? That would draw many conclusions, and many are going to say, well, you got gifted, or, well, I've had people, tell me I'm special. No, I don't think I'm special at all. I just think I'm a person that somehow or another gets happy,
Maybe just a little,
I don't know what to say.
Maybe just a little more observant than a lot of people.
I guess, And so that was the Carbon River incident that I was going to share with you. And then there was the Eatonville incident where a woman was telling me, and I think I mentioned this earlier, I think I did, a woman in Eatonville, I think I told you, out in the Eatonville, it's just over there by the Eatonville Cutoff Road. And she lived back in there. and she kept telling me that her kids, she had this big high fence, solid wood fence, behind her place, and then all back behind there was just solid woods. And she said her place became alive at night. And I said, what do you mean by that? And she said, the whole place came alive at night. She goes, there was beating, something keeps beating on the fence. She goes, I've got something running around and kicking up the flowers in my yard. And I said, well, that could be deer. And she goes, well, you should hear what I hear out here. She goes, we're hearing howls and stuff like that, Well, I played a few, little sound bites for them. When was that? I'm wanting to say that this one though was before this one was back in like 2009. That incident, that Eaton incident. Now that I think of it, that was before I got injured on the job, so that was around 2009. And so I had brought her gifts, because for Christmas Eve, because she was she was low on money, and she felt really bad that her kids weren't going to get anything for Christmas. And so I took my daughter and I went out there, and it was like freezing fog. I mean, you couldn't hardly see in front of you. I mean, I was like, great. I'm driving a Mustang. I've got rear-wheel drive with posi traction. Here. Exactly. Thank you.
Not the best vehicle in those conditions.
Thank you. Not exactly ideal. And here I am with this V8. And I'm driving. I got pretty good at driving it. I used to drive some pretty hefty cars. But anyway, I got out there with my daughter, and we gave her the gifts, and we visited for a little bit. And she said thank you, the thank yous and everything. And I'm like, okay, here's your gifts, and I got to get going. This road is really really bugging me. And we had gone out there. I had actually gone out there behind her house and looked, and it was just really gloomy, a lot of thick woods, and there was just this hollowed out area right behind her Finch, which I found really interesting, and a bunch of broken branches. So I was thinking about what she told me, and I thought she's probably more than likely telling the truth, I'm sure, because of the stuff she told me. And her kids were always, one time she told me that her kids came screaming home, and they never made it to the bus because they said the stick people were out there. And she goes, stick people. She goes, the stick people, the stick people. She goes, they're out there. They're going to get us. And the kids ran home, and she had to drive them to school that morning. Mm-hmm. But in any event, so I was leaving, and I was turning out off of her driveway onto, I made another turn and got out more on the main road. I still wasn't on the main road yet. And I hadn't driven more. I was driving like 22 miles an hour, 24 miles an hour. So I was going slow because I thought I cannot afford to wreck my new car out here in the middle of nowhere, And all of a sudden, I had my, fog lights on, and I couldn't see not even 10 feet in front of me. The fog was so thick. And I see all of a sudden, I see a calf. I mean, literally a huge calf, kind of a cinnamony brown color, and then it's gone. I mean, in an instant, I see this calf and part of a knee, and it's gone. Now, I'm trying to, make the distance. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm trying right now to calculate the distance from the ground to my vision, not the top of the car, but where my vision was, because I'm short, and the car, the Mustang isn't known for being real high. However, if you really calculate that had to have been a huge individual for me to see the calf at that distance. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
But that's not what I'm thinking when I'm seeing. I'm like, my daughter, I was like, did you see that? And I stopped. I'm on the road and I stopped. I'm fumbling for I'm literally shaking, and I'm fumbling for my window. And for some dumb reason, I rolled the window down, and I'm like, and I'm listening, and it sounded on the other side that it run. I knew what happened. It was running. It literally took a stride in front of my car and kept going. And it sounded like the forest was exploding. You could hear wood flying and splitting everywhere. Well, it sounded like trees were exploding. And I knew that this thing had to have been huge. And so, dummy me, I didn't get any repercussions for it. I'm like, come back, no. I knew I had a camera in there somewhere. I'm fumbling for my camera, and I'm like, by that time, you know what I'm saying? I'm in the dark. It's too late. It's just too late, and but that was a phenomenal experience, So
oh, yeah.
I don't know if you want to call that a sighting, because all I saw was a calf. But I'll tell you what, that thing, and I was like, they are all over Eatonville area. You know that.
Oh yeah.
They're and they're increasing in numbers.
Oh, yeah, they are.
And so, anyway, that was a crazy experience that I had. That one gave me kind of the hair raising up on my arms, over that one. And then, really a lot didn't happen, for a few years. Nothing really. I'm busy with work, and I got hurt. I had to have surgery on my back, and, everything just stopped for me. I couldn't go out or do anything. But, as I began to heal and other things began to happen, I moved. And then, this girlfriend and I, she has a partial, what do I want to say? She has access to a cabin in Ocean Shores. Mm-hmm. And this was in, I believe, 2014. Well, I'm going to say this is 2014. And Scott Taylor, do you know who Scott Taylor is? A lot of people know who he is.
I know the name, I think.
Okay. So Scott Taylor was a really good friend of my girlfriend's, and he had just called her like the week before, and we were planning a trip down there. And we were on our way down there, and she goes, "Oh, by the way," she goes, Scott called me and told me that there had been a sighting a sighting, not just an incident or somebody heard something. They had a sighting just 2 blocks from where we were going. I said, what? And she goes, yes. And she goes, and someone else said that they think that they saw something out there too. So there's something going on out there at Ocean Shores. And I'm like, really?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's an active area.
Yeah, I guess so. So we get down there, and we get all our stuff in there. And that night, let's see, we'd gone down there twice. That year, we'd gone down there. And the first night, she was really excited. She goes, let's go start a campfire, because if you came down the steps of the front door and you turned to your right and you went out about 40 feet, you turn left and go in this little cubby little thing that had been hollowed out, and there was a picnic chair, and there was a large tree, and there was a dugout area for a campfire. Really nice, rocks around it, large rock. It had all been set up. It was so nice, and it was by this canal. And so we were just sitting out there talking about this stuff, what Scott had said and everything. And I think that it had gotten like around 11 o'clock or so, and I had to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, I'm gonna go. I'll be back, And so I left her out there. She goes, I'll just sit out here and wait for you. So I was, in there, and I heard her dog barking out there. So anyway, I make it my way back out there, and she goes, I can't sit down. I said, what? And she goes, something happened. I said, what do you mean something happened? She goes, Becky, a huge branch right behind where I was just sitting, just broke off. And I said, what? I said, you're kidding me. So we, already, seriously, Will, we had some interesting things happen around that cabin. We went out there twice and had incidences. One time we woke up the next morning with the windows. I had little teeny pebbles, little tiny, those tiny little gravel pebbles or something being shot at and pinging off the window. And the bedroom was upstairs in a loft. And downstairs was all the windows were open. And that gave me the creeps because, we couldn't even, we didn't even have blinds or curtains, And I was not trying to be a spectacle, I want to be looked at, you know what I mean? So, but I was happy that we would go upstairs, and there was 2 areas, where we could, so I could sleep. And so, in any event, I got woke up one of the mornings with pinging off the window. And then I think that was the second time that we went there, and we discovered, some disturbance around the front steps. And we started following what looked like to be a trail and went out from the front where the front porch was, maybe out 35, 40 feet, and found prints. So she called Scott, and Scott came out, and he verified. He came out there and verified, found the prints and verified there was activity. So he stayed a while, and then went on to be on his way. But that we got some backup on that and some verification. So there's a lot of stuff going on out in Ocean Shores, just like you said. And I was kind of shocked. And I had to say to myself, there's stuff going on out here too, and there is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I really at this point haven't. I haven't, just closed the door on it, but I sort of have because I've had so many experiences that I know that they're real. I've seen them with my face. They've looked at me in the eye. I've seen their bodies. I've seen what they do, and I used to be in a group, of thinking. I used to be in this thinking process, that and I believe that there can be some sort of communication, but I'm wary of that now because of all the people that are missing. And I'm just not so sure, at this point in time, with me being a grandmother, of 7 and having 2 great grandchildren and, having 4 kids to live with, I just, I want to spend time with my family. I want to see my family grow up. And I don't want to get out and have that one time happen where I get injured because I think that there's a lot of those individuals out there who do not mean well toward us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of these subjects that one should not enter into lightly, and a lot of people do, unfortunately.
Right, and there's a lot of people getting injured. There's a lot of people who are disappearing, and I still have people, on my Facebook page and stuff, and I stay lightly around the fringes. I just stay lightly around the fringes. But,
sure.
If the shows that I did, and that I've done with you have helped you, if they've helped somebody out there, or people out there that are trying to make sense of something, then I was just, it made it all worthwhile,
and it does.
to do it.
It does. I mean, it really, you'd be amazed. The people who contact me and say, God, I really am glad you had that person talk about their experience, because I had something happen very similar. And it helps them sort of put it in place and so they can move on with their lives.
Yeah, they're not crazy. They're not crazy. And it's happening. And, I wish more people would open their mind to realizing that families that are going out camping know that you might not be alone. Just know that you probably are not alone.
Very true.
And there are, there's a whole new species that's out there that they never exist. Just like that, the reaction of those elderly people. I mean, they were just absolutely. I wish I had a picture of their face that I could send you. They were dumbfounded. They're like, what? Mm-hmm. You mean they're really real? And I just thought, and I thought, you're right in the middle of Sasquatch Central, and you don't even know it, and you're dumbfounded over the fact that they're real. Your grandson won't come out here anymore, saying he sees a saw a red-eyed monster walking around, the back part of the property by the creek screaming, and he's so scared he won't come there anymore. Mm-hmm. And you guys want to know if they're real?
Yeah.
So, I'll be out in the woods again. If I go out in the woods again, it's going to be to walk my dog. It's not going to be to go looking for them, because another thing that I know.
Sure.
And I don't know why they come to me. They're the ones that come to you. Every time you try to go looking for them, most of the time you never find them.
This is true.
Because they come on their terms. They're going to show up whenever they feel like it. Most of them have taken me by surprise. Now, if you're living in an area where they're right behind you, you're going to have, more than likely have incident after incident like I did on the property that I was raised in and that property out there, the property I was just speaking of. Mm-hmm. But most people don't, they don't live in an area like that, and they go out in the woods, and then something happens, and they have a sighting or some, and they're absolutely shocked, and they're terrified,
Right.
And you do. You got to watch over your children. You got to, just kind of keep an eye out around you.
Absolutely. Well, we are just running out of time now. Any final thoughts?
At this point, I've shared everything that I can share. If I have anything that ever happens again, Will, you're going to be the first one, that I contact, and I will. I'm making a promise to you about that. If I'm ever out in the woods, because I will be out in the woods again.
Sure.
It's just right now I'm busy taking care of grandkids and being a grandma, but I will be back out. I'm trying to train my dog right now to find mushrooms.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a little limp right now. I think I'm going to have to take him to the vet, and find out what's going on there, so we haven't done that yet. And I need to get this car, figure out I need to get this vacuum leak fixed in my car.
Sure.
So I need to get back on the road. But yeah, I'll be out, and if anything else happens, I'll let you know. For some reason, I don't understand. One thing I guess I have to say to everybody and you, I don't understand why all these things have happened to me. People go their whole lives, hunters out in the woods all the time. People spend their whole lives living out in the woods. Mm-hmm. And maybe they'll have one sighting. Or maybe they'll hear something and then realize years later, oh, that must have been that. Or some people never do.
Right. I think it's just the amount of awareness.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what it is.
Well, You and I will certainly be talking, and we'll meet when I come back up there. I'm planning on another trip. So
yes, that would be awesome.
We have a lot to talk about, so.
Yeah. Well, you have a great day, and everybody in the audience have a great day, and we shall talk to you soon.
All right, Rebecca, thank you again so much, and we will chat soon.
All right, that sounds good. Talk to you later.
All righty. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning, @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out